Well, here we are, another episode of Fork in the Road, where we talk to the leaders in sports, business, and entertainment. And this week, well, we've got a long-time mate of mine who I haven't seen for a very long time, but I've been seeing everything that she's been doing on the TV, on the block. She dominated for Australia, and also she dominated for Melbourne, and that was when it was the Vixens, wasn't it, Bianca Chatfield?
Hey, Corey. Yeah, Melbourne Phoenix to start with, and then we merged into Melbourne Vixens, which that's what it's called today. So I know it seems like such a long time ago that I played, though.
Yeah, I know. We don't really want to go down that path where we're talking about how long ago that we both played. I think we'd better off.
And how good we were and all of that.
Exactly right. So we did mention off air what's happening in your world at the moment.
Well, so I'm in Melbourne and lockdown 2.0, we're right in the middle of it. And during the first round of lockdown, for me, I have been wanting to do this course. So Seth Godin, who is a leadership guru over in the States, runs a course called an Alt MBA. So it's like an alternative MBA to what you usually would do. Rather than focusing on finance and business and all of that, it focuses on human connection and decision making. And so it's been on my list to do for a long time. I've always banged on that I'm too busy to do it and couldn't find the time, because you need about 20 to 30 hours a week. So long story short, I'm week 2 of that at the moment, and my head is exploding because there's just so much that I'm trying to take in, but I feel very grateful that I've actually got the time. And so lockdown's zooming along right now.
So then what would your advice be to a lot of people out there? Because the way that I tried to approach the first lockdown, I wanted to make sure that I got as much out of it that I could come out the back end of it and I really utilise the time properly. So now that you've had the experience of the first lockdown and now you're going to the second one, what would you be? There's a lot of people out there at the moment, as you know, are doing it tough. But what would your words be to people out there in terms of if they're thinking about doing anything? Well, probably just get out there and do it.
Well, absolutely. But I think even bringing it back just so much more simply is that I think whatever you're going through, whatever you're feeling, I think what's worked for me has been to just try and keep myself to a routine. So I'm used to being so busy. Then I got shocked with there's not much going on at the moment. All my worlds have sort of shut down. And so then you go through this phase of really struggling to find your purpose and what you're meant to be doing and how you're going to get through the days. So the key thing for me that I've learned is just having a routine, especially a morning routine, getting up at 7 a.m. whenever the alarm goes off, but keeping that consistent and going out, having a walk, going to get your coffee, go back home, sit down, do your emails or whatever, but just having a structure, which you and I both learned from athlete life, but keeping yourself accountable to some kind of structure, I think helps just get through the day with a little bit more of a positive attitude and a bit more proactiveness. So I learnt that lockdown 1, and that certainly helped me be able to absorb and get through everything that I'm doing right now.
So yeah, you would have learnt that from athlete life where we both would have had that routine. But look, even I think for a lot of athletes out there, and it's probably whilst we're on that question, how do you think at the moment a lot of these athletes, now I've noticed a lot of the netballers, they've gone into a hub in Brisbane. And I also know the AFL players have gone into their respective hubs. How do you reckon that you would have coped by going into a real bubble like that?
Well, part of me thinks I would be okay, because I was very much, when I go on tour with the Australian team, sometimes we're away for 3, 4, 5 weeks at a time. And yes, you missed home, but you had a purpose, so you're okay. This is very different, I think, for the athletes that I've been talking to, especially the netballers that are up in Queensland. They've gone away with not knowing whether they're going to be away for 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 14 weeks. They've got no clue. And I think that makes it a bit trickier that there's no end date for them. Yes, they're excited to play, but I think that's going to be the tricky part, is just all the unknown, which is everybody in the world right now. So I think I would have been all right, but I think once it gets over the 4 or 5 week mark, that's when you start to even just crave your own space that you would have at home away from the team.
Yeah. And I suppose the other part of it is, be like, your journey into netball. Where did that all stem from? Like, just give everyone an idea. Obviously, you did end up at, I mean, Melbourne Phoenix, Melbourne Vixens, but how did you end up with your career going into netball?
Honestly, I think, and I probably know this more now when I reflect on it, but I mean, I was just a tall girl growing up. So my mum's 6 foot, my dad's 6'4". I was always going to be super tall. I grew up down the Mornington Peninsula and in Victoria. And I think for me, I was always one of those kids at school that didn't want to stand out in the crowd. So I would hunch over and try and be like everybody else. And I didn't want to be at the back of every school photo. And I just tried to, I guess, avoid owning my height. And as you would know, being tall as well, it's something that everyone points out to you every single day of your life. And not necessarily in a negative way. But I honestly think netball for me was a place where I could be a part of a team, which I loved, but it was a place where I could actually feel confident within myself, because height was such an asset when you were playing a sport like netball or basketball. So I played both sports growing up, and I think netball, I just moved along a bit quicker, and that's why I stayed there. But yeah, it was really just a place where I actually felt confident, and that competitive spirit in me really kicked in as soon as I got out there on court. So yeah, that's as simple, I think, as it can be for me, is why I played. And I think that's what, once I was in it, I, again, then just love the challenge of it, you know, being better, trying to beat certain opponents, trying to win, trying to, you know, win a premiership or win a gold medal. It just kind of kept flowing on from there.
And who was the person that you can recall back? I think everyone remembers, like, people that actually gave them a boost, or, you know, I mean, really gave you that belief that to enable you to go to the next level. Who was the person that really believed in Bianca Chatfield, that you can look back on now, that you'd be able to buy them a beer or wine and say thank you?
Oh, you know, there's probably just a team that I was a part of, and that was in 2000. So in 99, Melbourne Phoenix, I was still at school, and Melbourne Phoenix needed a defender. They had a few injuries, and the coach was Joyce Brown. So some might know Joyce's son, Fraser, for playing footy for Carlton. But Joyce was such an iconic person in netball. She'd coached Australia already, and she'd come back to coach Melbourne just before she pretty much finished her career as a coach. And so she grabbed hold of me as a 16-year-old, brought me into an environment where I was surrounded by some amazing players like Eloise Southby or Boniello, Sherelle McMahon, Susan Meaney, Eloise Southby, all of these amazing players. And she had me in this team, and they were all so much older than me. But I just remember moments in that year where Joyce would be ringing my teachers at school, telling me how important it was as a female athlete to have a career outside of your sport. So if I was going to play well in sport and keep growing my career, I needed to make sure I ticked off all the boxes at school. She cared about me so much more than just like as a person, rather than just as a player. And then having all of those amazing role models in the team as well, who kept you accountable, who pushed me to challenge myself out there on court. But also, as you know, we had so much fun together off court. They were so supportive, and yeah, it was just an incredible team to be a part of. And we did win that year. I was a bench player and came on, I remember, at halftime during the grand final. And just to be a part of something so special with those girls and with Joyce, and to see their excitement. And I mean, when you win your first premiership, it's amazing, but you also then think, oh, you think it's actually easier at the start. And then once you go on and play many, many more years, you go, oh, wow, that was actually pretty special to be a part of that, because it's so much harder to win them when teams change and new players come in. So, yeah, that was an exceptional team, the girls and the coach.
And so it's basically those role models plus the coach. I mean, who were the ones that really stuck out in terms of their preparation and the way that they go about it, that you remember back now that they're the ones that had an indelible mark on your own career and how you go about it at the same time?
Well, I think Liz Boniello, who was Liz Taverner when she played, she stood out to me because she had this ability to push herself really hard on the court. And she was one of those ones that you just watch her and you think, oh, you know, she's getting to these balls, she's having good conversations with everyone to try and improve herself. But off the court, she was very organised, and I was not a very organised person at this stage. So she kind of taught me about having that structure, I think, in my life. But then there were players like Eloise Southby, who off court, she was such a driver and promoter of the sport. So as a player in netball, you can't rely on, you know, just earning big money from playing the game. So Eloise was out there, and she was just her entrepreneurial spirit, her way that she, you know, taught us how to engage with sponsors and build a big support network up there, and build your big network where, you know, if someone's putting money into the sport, then you go over the top to thank them for that. And it was those kind of values that really stood out with Eloise. And then Susan Meany is another one who, it was her calmness. So no matter what was going on, she wasn't dramatic. She'd always just find a way to problem solve and not get overly emotional about things. And she was always the one that had a huge amount of care for what you were doing off the court and how your life was going. And she'd ask me a million questions that you never usually wanted to sit down and answer. But I really appreciated that she took that time to actually get to know all the players in the team off the court. So yeah, those probably three players really stood out to me. And I'd watched them on TV. I'd grown up, the little bits you could see netball on TV on the ABC, I'd grown up watching them, and when they finally got to debut for Australia, I remember watching that, and so yeah, it was pretty special to not only play with them with the Vixens, but also when I finally got into the Australian team, they were also there with me.
And Bianca, you actually mentioned someone who I'd nearly forgotten about, but I think her role in terms of the way that she was able to drive the profile of the sport and the game. You mentioned Eloise Southby. If there was anyone that mentioned, yes, we know that she was the daughter of a famous AFL footballer, but she really did run with the ball, and she was fantastic for promoting the game of netball in Australia, wasn't she?
She was, and I think that's what she taught me, and a lot of other players have done similar to her in, you know, Liz Ellis especially in New South Wales, and now are all in the media. But those players passed down to us that it's not just our responsibility to play the game and be successful, but it was our responsibility to help grow the sport and leave it in a better way than what we found it. And so I think I saw Eloise, you know, being one of the Players Association reps who would tell me and educate me why it was super important to fight for things that we needed. And sometimes that's uncomfortable, and sometimes that's really hard, being a voice out there representing the players. But just being able to see her in action do it, see her get the change, and then allow me to have a better career when I was then, you know, becoming a senior player. And so now I always felt obligated to kind of pick up where Ella left off. And Ingrid Dick was the same. She was a huge driver of that here in Melbourne. But yeah, where those girls had left it when they retired, it was then my job to grab hold of that and see what I could do and how far I could drive the sport into a further position. And, you know, that's what I look back probably as one of the more prouder things I am of my career, is more about the changes that we made along the way and how the sport was in a far better position when I retired than what it was when I first started.
Yeah, but also take everyone out there, because I know through knowing you through for such a long time, and a number of the girls, just tell everyone out there about what you used to have to put up with or go through just to play and get on the court. Like, I know that, yes, everyone sees it, it's great. They hear the end bit of, yes, you played for Phoenix and Vixens and played for Australia, but, mate, it wasn't easy, was it?
No, it wasn't easy. I mean, I think my first contract with Melbourne Phoenix was $1,000, and that wasn't $1,000 a game. That was $1,000 a year. And it was, yeah, a year. And it was pretty much just covering a bit of petrol to get you to and from training. And at that stage, we were having to supply our own tape to strap our ankles before training. We were having to buy our own food when we were on tour or away for a game. And I even remember a team manager bringing away with us like a toasted sandwich maker, a microwave. We'd put them on the plane to take with us into hotels so that we could try and save money on meals before games. And I know, and even like your medical expenses, that was one of the huge changes we eventually made. But, you know, if you hurt your ankle or you've done your knee playing netball, which is a common injury, unfortunately, and you're out for 12 months, all the costs of MRIs and your surgery and all of that was on you. So a lot of girls could not afford to keep playing the sport because it did eventually cost them a lot. So yeah, it was a massive eye-opener. And even when you first made the Australian team, I think for me, we fought for about $100 a day as a bit of a per diem as such to help cover the cost while you're on tour. Yeah. And then by the time I retired, that was at $400 a day that you got paid. So there was still no match payments, and there still is no match payments for playing for Australia, but you get a daily amount, and now it's up to $400, $450, I think the girls get, which is so much better than where it was at. But yeah, it's taken a long time to see those changes, and it's kind of laughable when you look back on it now. But we did play for the love. We loved it, and that's why we did it, and that's why we put up with all of those conditions. And you know, you have to start somewhere.
And like, if you can recall back then, like, how hard is it you talk about people's mental health nowadays and your well-being, how tough was that even for you and a lot of the girls to go through? Like, because even I used to get frustrated for you because I knew that the preparation and what you used to put into the game, and yet you're not only expected to drive your sport, you're meant to then go away and then work, and both of them are probably not giving you support either way. So from a mental point of view, how hard was it for not only you or any other stories about what people went through?
Oh, look, without a doubt, it was tough. But the only thing that I can reflect on is that I didn't know any different. So if I was going to be an Australian netballer, is what I dreamed about, I had to do all that thing. I had to have a job on the side. I had to go to uni. I had to train when I could and fit that in. You know, you had to also then go and do whatever you needed to promote the sport. It was just how it was. It was going to be a busy lifestyle, and it was going to be intense. And pretty much as soon as you got sick of having to do all of that, that's probably when you made the decision of whether you wanted to keep playing or not. So I was fortunate that I guess I never came to that crossroads. I loved it enough that I was happy to put up with all of that. Things have definitely changed now. I mean, I'm more of an optimist, right? I don't know why this has just become ingrained in me, but I always just like to see the tiny little light that might be there amongst all the negativity and chaos, and I just keep focusing on that. And that's probably what helps me get through and help me play for as long as I did. You know, and now, yeah, I also think in retirement, and Corey, it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on this, but when I finally decided to retire, and it was only 4 years ago now, the fact that I had all these different things that I'd already experienced in life, athlete life was only one small component of me. So I'd done a uni degree, I'm a qualified teacher, I'd owned my own business, I'd done all these other jobs on the side. And so I was much more established to step into normal life than what I would have probably been had I been in a position where I was an AFL footballer and hadn't looked at anything else. So yeah, I think that was also quite helpful once you got to the other side too, the fact that you had lived quite a normal life in some respects and just had the netball stuff on top.
It is in some way, shape or form, them paying you $1,000 for the year, I nearly said a week, in some way, shape or form, it probably nearly has done you a long-term favour, even though we'd all still prefer the money. But as you mentioned, it did force you to be more well-rounded. You knew more about the world. You knew you had to constantly think about, I need to find other money outside of my sport. So in some weird way, it's ended up pretty good.
Absolutely. And I look at it, when I went to school and growing up down the peninsula, all you think about is you get a normal job, you go to uni, you know, whatever you might. So teaching for me was what I decided to do. And I never ever thought or knew that I could live a life that was quite entrepreneurial or freelance, or I'd never even heard of these kind of words. And So now that I've retired, I love that I can actually live a life where I'm doing lots of different things. I can kind of make it all work into one job. I'm not in one 9-to-5 job because that doesn't really suit me. But yeah, it gave me this entrepreneurial spirit that I didn't really know even existed until I was kind of forced into it and having to find all these little side hustles on the along the way when I was playing. But yeah, super grateful for it now because it definitely has paid off. And yeah, just helped you back yourself and believe in yourself and have a crack at things. And if it doesn't work, oh well, move on to the next. Yeah, it does help you be a bit more resilient.
And you mentioned before, look, I know that, yeah, the pay rates actually improved a fair bit playing for Australia, but that must be the one part that even I'm pretty jealous of, that yes, when you play Australian rules football, you get paid a fair bit of money to do it, but what's it like when you get to represent your country and put on the green and gold and hearing the national anthem? Must be a pretty special feeling.
Oh, yeah, it is. And I tell you, my favourite part of playing for the Diamonds, and this is actually our trademark, is Sisters in Arms. And if I take it way back to what that means to us, it's when you're taking on, say, New Zealand, because when I was playing, they were definitely our main rivals, but being a part of a team with 11 other girls and all your support staff, probably the most special moment is standing on that transverse line where you're looking right in the eyes of the Silver Ferns girls, and you sing the national anthem and you're arm in arm with your teammates and all the coaching staff. And no matter what happens next, you know that everyone's got your back. And you've worked so hard to get there that you just, I don't know, it's just one that sends shivers up your spine that when you get the opportunity to do it. I tell you what, this would probably be similar to you in a way too, that no matter what team you've been a part of, it's the moments that you have together off the court. So the moments that we had together on tour, traveling around the world with all your mates, getting to just focus on training, you know, when we're away. That was a huge luxury for us to not have to work while we're on tour. But yeah, those kind of special moments are what mean the most to me. And now that I have finished, the connections you have with those teammates are so strong still, and they're your best mates in different ways to, you know, your other best mates away from sport, because they know you so well. They know how you react. They know how to pick you up when you're down. You know, they've had to do that in sport. And so that's what I think is pretty cool. Australian team or Melbourne, it's just those connections that you have with each other.
This episode is brought to you by National Make Good Solutions, experts in taking your commercial property back to the day it was built at the end of your lease. I'm curious to know, what did you used to do? Can you even think back? I know it might have been a little while ago, but just take everyone through those first moments that once the national anthem happens, what did you used to do to then calm down and then reset and go, right, I've actually got a game to play?
Well, I was a defender, so I know the shooters used to have a very different setup because they were all anxious about that first goal and needing the ball and needing to get it in first to get their confidence up. Whereas I was a bit of an agitator. So I really enjoyed, as soon as the national anthem had finished, I would walk into position next to my teammates and I would just be like in her side, just annoying her, like just moving my feet.
You were that annoying defender. You were that real annoying defender that would just walk down, stand on their toes, that type of stuff.
And even though deep down I was thinking, oh, what's going to happen if they shoot the ball first and, you know, score on me and then they get their confidence up. But I just was all about that, I guess, body language and trying to be intimidating from the second I walked up to my opponent. Bit of a fake it till you make it sort of setup. So that was what I always focused on. I mean, who knew how it played out from there? But yeah, that was always my kind of first thought as soon as that national anthem was over.
Yeah. Now, one thing I'm going to turn to, I probably even first read the advertisement that was in the paper just recently I think it was last weekend, and it even made me mad because I'm in the position now that when you've got 4 daughters, and you would have thought from knowing you over the journey, we would have thought that we've come a long way since the wouldn't say the dark days, but the sport has come on in leaps and bounds. And how did it make you feel seeing something like that? Because my blood boiled probably just as much as yours, that, you know, come on, guys, I would have thought that the sport, you know, I mean, has well and truly gotten into the bright lights, and we can portray the sport a hell of a lot better than some dickhead editor has done that.
Well, exactly. My blood was boiling. I actually got shown it first, and I just saw the 2.5 stars that the Age reporter in the lifestyle TV guide section had given Super Netball, starting up, it's 2.5 stars. And I thought, what the hell? But I didn't actually read the comments or the quote that they'd written. And it wasn't until I picked it up the next day and I actually read the quote, and it made comments about a glamour sport and it's for secondary students, and it's just such a misconception of what the actual game is. And I know people like you, Corey, when you come to a game, you appreciate the athleticism and how incredible the sport is, whether it's now or whether it was 20 years ago. It's just, yeah, I don't know who wrote that. I'm sure it was just someone who's never been to a game before. How can you judge live sport and give it 2.5 stars when it hasn't even happened yet? And just to be, just to be so vague and blasé and just sexist in the comments, just really, made my blood boil. That's a very good way to describe it. But also, I appreciate that, and one thing I like that is that as soon as something like this happens now, social media is a perfect place for everyone to give their voice and opinion, sometimes negatively, sometimes positively, but I do enjoy that it's become a bit of a place where netballers have gone, no, I don't stand for this anymore. We've come too far to accept this crap now. And so I've really loved, in a positive way, all the reactions the teams have come out with. A lot of the team sponsors have come out with great video footage of the girls, putting everything into being out there on court. So you can't let one little thing get you down, but I do enjoy the fact that netball's been like, right, we are actually going to have a reaction to this and not let this keep happening.
You're right. I thought the Vixens video was a brilliant video, and for those who haven't seen it, I think, you can easily see why there's a lot of girls that have actually gone on to play AFL football, because once you see the netball up close and the way that the girls attack the ball, they're not worried about what's coming from the other side or anything like that. So you can see why there's been a number of girls that have actually either crossed over into both sports.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they say netball's a non-contact sport. I don't even know if that's still in the rules, because let's be honest, it's not at all.
Yes, especially when they've got these big defenders that love to intimidate their opponents, don't they, Bianca?
They love to agitate, that's for sure.
Yes. Now, you must have a big sense of pride just talking about today's game, but also there must be a little slight tinge of jealousy seeing it where the game's evolved, being on Channel 9, on the bright lights. I know I would say, knowing you, it would be a good bit of jealousy that you would have loved to have seen and have the conditions and the opportunities of what the girls are getting now.
You're right. I definitely love how the sport is now, and do wish that I was part of it in a small way, without all the pain that you have to go through with your body. Yeah. The only thing that I'll say on that one is that because netball has become more like a job, I actually don't know whether the connection and the same kind of friendship that we had with teammates back then is the same as what they have now. Because, I mean, you would have this intel with footy too, in that footy is a job. You go to training, you do whatever meetings you need to do, you train, then you go home and you kind of you remove yourself from the team to hang out with your other friends. Whereas we were just always around each other, enjoying each other's company socially or, with training. So now I think it's become more professional. It is more like a job. And so they don't necessarily have as much time as what we probably had to hang out with each other. I hope they can maintain that balance and also maintain that connection that we all had when we were playing netball.
Yeah. Now, the other one I'll move on to be what doesn't prepare you? You obviously were on the TV for playing netball, but what doesn't prepare you for when you actually go onto a huge show like The Block? You obviously had a lot of experience in sport and dealing with you, but I suppose when you're in that period where you were playing netball, the netball isn't at the exposure of what it is now. So how was it for someone like you where you went, holy shit, this is just a whole new level of my exposure? So how did you cope with it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've always loved renovating. My dad's a builder. That's my backstory. I always wanted to do that show. And so as soon as I finished netball, I started applying for it. And I was honestly like a little fangirl. Like I was so desperate to do it because I thought, how cool, you get to renovate on Channel 9's money. I don't even have to invest my own money into it. And then maybe you get to auction it off and then make some money at the end. So that was why I wanted to do it. But going through it, I thought, if you work hard, like Athlete Life, if you work hard, you put in the time, you put in the effort, you're going to get the reward at the end. I didn't realize about the whole reality TV thing and what's kind of wrapped up in that, and how, you know, we need the emotion and we need the drama and we need all of that too. Like I just underestimated all that side of it. And The Block is a pretty normal reality show in that, you know, everything that you're doing on a Sunday happens on a Sunday. Like it's not edited out of sync or anything. So that was a big eye opener to start with, that it wasn't necessarily just about working as hard as you possibly could. And then, when you go out and you put yourself out there, like on something like that, you film it first and you've got a bit of time before it actually goes to air. So you've got a bit of time to get your head around it. But then the paranoia around how things are edited and what they're going to put to air and what moments happen with other contestants, which you don't really know about, but then you don't realize they're bagging you out and you don't really have an opportunity to counteract that. And I mean, in netball, we never had any real negativity in the media. If anything, if you played badly, you just didn't get mentioned. So it was just a whole new ball game for me, pardon the pun. But what I think for me, what I'd learned from sport was that, especially with social media, I'm not one to read comments. I don't mind what people think of me. I've just learned, and I'm old enough now to just move on, like me or not, whatever. Whereas Carla, who I did the show with, she was very much like reading different comments and, oh my gosh, this person said this about us. And I was like, I can't deal knowing all of that. So the social media side was certainly a massive learning experience, just not putting the time and energy into that or reading that, posting and trying to be positive. And that was what I had to always come back to. But in saying all of that, I just love the experience. It was awesome. It's kind of funny now that you play netball for 17 years of your life and you do and film a TV show for 3 months, and a lot of people know you more for doing a TV show, but hey, that's okay. That's all part of it. I also love that we got to put netball on that bigger scale where, you know, people were talking about it and people knew us for netball. And yeah, I love that little girls could watch us and see that what we could do, and just be empowered by 2 girls with no trade experience, just taking on a building site and seeing what we could produce. And yeah, I was pretty proud of our apartment in the end.
So when was the moment that you really sensed that this is way bigger than what you'd ever imagined it would be?
I mean, behind the scenes, you see how much money they put into the show, just that how many cameras are around, how many people are around, and what goes into actually just creating it. That was a big eye-opener. But I think it's what it's on air, like, you know, the way you advertise, say, netball, it gets a little bit of advertising when it's about to go to air, and Super Netball's up, and we're seeing that at the moment. But The Block, it is non-stop, relentless ads that it's coming on TV, and then ads about what's happening on tonight's episode, and just there's so much around that and so much promo that goes on around that. That was a huge eye-opener. And just, I mean, I think the hours is what we had to put in on that show. I knew it would be hard. I did not believe we would be up all night, sometimes 2 nights in a row with 0 sleep. Athlete life, you would never be allowed to do that. You've got people telling you need lots of sleep and to eat well. But on that show, it's not a part of it. It's not about, you know, looking after yourself. It's about getting your house built in as quick a time as you can. And so, yeah, we'd have 2 nights in a row where you'd have 0 sleep. So you can imagine all the craziness and emotions that you're going through and how tough it actually is to get yourself up and about, to not be angry and not crack the shits on the camera, you know. And I was very paranoid about that, how they were going to portray me, and I was like, oh, what am I getting myself into? But I mean, it all worked out okay. Things that I was worried about, some of it didn't even make it to air, and other things that you think are not a big storyline are massive storylines. So yes, it was a cool experience, but I learned a lot. Yeah.
Now, what we do, the actual name of what we've actually called this is obviously Fork in the Road. You've seen
I love the logo. It's my favourite.
But where is the fork in the road moment for Bianca Chatfield's life or career where things could have gone either way? Where is your moment where it's actually gone on for the better?
Well, I think for me, and I've referred to these girls in that particular team that I was a part of. So for me, it's probably the moment being surrounded by those girls in this team in 2000 with Melbourne Phoenix, where I never really dreamed that I could play for Australia or that I could have a career where I could do whatever I actually wanted to do and not what I thought I had to do. And it was just being around this really influential and positive and contagious kind of energy that these girls had. Eloise, Susie, Ingrid, Sherelle, Tash Chocolate, all my friends definitely for life, but just that moment of being around those girls and just what they taught me, I will always be super grateful for.
And B, it's also, this segment has also become a real quick favourite of mine. Eddie Maguire's done it. All the people that have come on thus far, well, actually only the last 2 or 3 weeks, they've actually put in their favourite photo that means the world to them, something that is a picture that actually inspires them, and it's been a real favourite of mine. And what's your favourite photo?
Well, I'm going to throw it back actually, and this photo here, so this is the girls that I've been talking about for a lot of this episode, and it's my Melbourne Phoenix teammates, and this was in 2000 when this was taken, but it was just a really special moment in time, being surrounded by them, learning from them, being influenced by them in good and sometimes bad ways, but having a lot of fun with these girls who even now, especially throughout lockdown, we've been reconnecting with each other on Zoom and just making sure each other is okay. So it was just a very special friendship that taught me a lot, that I am super grateful for.
Well, Bianca, it's a great photo. There are some people that would be very positive influences in that photo, but I know there's some troublemakers in that photo too. I know very well who's in that photo. And look, great bunch of girls. I've been looking forward to sit down with you for a long, long time. We've known each other a long time, and I think it's been great, your journey through netball, seeing you on the block, and just the job that you've been able to do to promote netball in Australia, you and all the girls, and especially in that photo that you mentioned. I think the girls owe you all a big glass of champagne, especially those girls in that photo. That they don't mind a glass or two of the champagne, these girls. So I think all the current day girls, they do owe you a lot, because you've been such a trailblazer in the space. And a big thank you for everyone that watches the show. And look, hopefully you get through lockdown 2.0, you come out the other side and you've got your, what is it, the diploma that you're going to do?
Well, it's MBA. It's not really a certificate or diploma, but...
B, tell everyone it's a diploma. Tell everyone you're doing something more clever than what you're really doing.
Yeah, that's right. It's some kind of PhD in something that I'll end up with. But thanks heaps, Corey. I've loved watching this. I've loved seeing this show come up on my social media feed. It's been very entertaining. So you're doing a great job. Thanks for having me on it.
No, great to have you. And actually, you are I've saved the best one for first. You're my first female that I've spoken to. So you are the first, and hopefully it's the first of many. I'll be actually knocking on your door and seeing who else we can actually speak to. So a big thank you from National Make Good Solutions, who are our sponsor, and our producer, Ange. He hopefully makes us both look good. So everyone, take care, and we'll see you soon.